Hello, everybody. I'm Ann Bauer. I am actually a member of the Speaker Series Committee. We're the committee that helps to formulate the speakers, and it's a lot of fun. We enjoy ourselves. And first, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Northampton Neighbors for those of you who may not know. Northampton Neighbors launched about 7 years ago to help Northamptonites who are 55 plus to stay in their homes and apartments and lead full and independent lives. We are part of an international movement of villages, as we are called. Our group, Northampton Neighbors, now has over 1,700 members. We provide many services, as many of you are aware. We have volunteer activities and other ways to connect with each other, including our interest groups, Mix and Mingle, and a number of committees like the Speaker Series Committee. The Speaker Series has been presenting monthly topics and lively speakers, mostly on Zoom, but we are working towards maybe resuming our hybrid presentations once we get into the fall. Hopefully we'll be doing that with the Senior Center. So we welcome you to all of these events, and we would love to have you volunteer and donate and join if you're not already a member of Northampton Neighbors. Please make a note, we are free. There is no membership fee. We are really interested in having as many people join as possible, and everyone can join. Our speaker is Alisa Klein. She is the executive director of Grow Food Northampton. Founded in 2010, Grow Food Northampton responds to immediate needs of community members for food, but also they are very involved in working on the long-term solutions for our local food system. I will let Alisa tell you more about Grow Food Northampton. I'm sure you have all run into them. Like I'm always down at the farmers markets, winter, summer, and they're there. They're very evident in our community, and they really do a lot for Northampton. Alisa has a long history of work in food justice and environmental sustainability. She also was a Northampton City Councilor for 2014 to 2020, which I did not realize. She's done a lot here in our city. She has won a number of different awards we were just talking about, largely for her outstanding leadership and communication skills. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Alisa Klein.
Thanks so much, Anne. That was a really sweet introduction. Thank you all so much for being here. I see a lot of people that I know. It's very exciting to see you. Several of you know a lot about Grow Food Northampton, so I look forward to the Q&A, hearing your input as well. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, and my cat is with us, and my dog is here too, so we all welcome you to this discussion about Grow Food Northampton. I'm going to share my screen, and as you can imagine, we have a lot of incredibly beautiful photos because we own a community farm that I'll tell you about, and the farm is an extraordinarily beautiful place. So we have a lot of great visuals. Okay, so as Anne said, Grow Food Northampton was founded in 2010. For those of you who were around Northampton at the time, you probably know the origin story, but I'll just share it very quickly. Two farmland parcels in our city in the heart of Florence were about to go up for sale. It was, I believe, two brothers-in-law, the Bean family and the Allard family, had owned farmland in Florence for generations. And they were about to sell them. And there was a developer that was poised to scoop them up and start building kind of mini mansions. And there were a number of community residents who just were appalled and said, we can't let this happen. We have to preserve our local food system. We have to preserve our local farms. And they put together, in a span of about 4 months, close to $1 million to purchase the land. It's quite a complicated story because we also worked with the city. We worked with the public trust for land. I think I'm saying that right. Sherry, who's on this Zoom, would know what the exact name is. It's just I'm blanking out at the moment. So all of these different entities were involved, but essentially the 2 farm parcels were purchased. Some of the land was deeded back to the city of Northampton for the playing fields that are adjacent to the community farm. Florence Fields, for those of you that know that area, it's at Meadow and Spring Streets. And 121 acres were reserved for Grow Food Northampton. So that's just kind of a very quick overview of the origins of the organization. The mission of Grow Food Northampton is to build a just and resilient local food and farming system that nourishes our community and protects and enriches the earth. So I'm going to talk about what that means a little bit. So this term food justice is a fairly new term and not everybody is familiar with it. If we look at the US population, we see that there are 41 million food insecure households. That's 12% of the population. But what is of particular concern is that Indigenous households, 45% are food insecure. Black households, 24% are food insecure. Latino households, 17% are insecure. And that all compares to white households that have 10% food insecurity. So you can see that there's a racialized injustice in food insecurity. People of color, families of color, households of color are much more likely to not have enough to eat. They're experiencing food insecurity and hunger. So if we want to define food justice, we have to be thinking about that racialized disparity. And what we're trying to achieve is something that is being called food sovereignty, which means that communities actually have the right to grow their own food, to sell food, to eat adequate amounts of nutritious, fresh, local, affordable food. And it means the dismantling of all of the different kinds of oppression that act as barriers to people getting enough fresh local food, to people having food sovereignty. And it really means food justice for an organization like Grow Food Northampton really means that we are able to supply to all residents of our community, no matter their income level, no matter their background, nutrient-rich, fresh, locally grown food. We also talk about farming justice, land and farming justice. So there are some really interesting facts that a lot of people don't know, but there has been a historical theft and dispossession of land. We know from indigenous peoples from back before colonizers came to North America, what is called North America, but also Black farmers and other communities of color had their lands stolen through various different means, from the USDA creating policies that took land from indigenous peoples and from Black farmers. In 1910, 1 in 7 farmers in the United States were African American, and they had titles to 19 million acres of farmland. But during the 20th century, beginning in the 19th century and through the 20th century, 98% of Black farmers were dispossessed of their land through all kinds of discriminatory practices. So today, 98% of private rural land is owned by white people. So that's the farming and land injustice. And when we define land justice, we are talking about notions of land back. You may have heard that term, rematriation of land, returning land to the indigenous descendants of the indigenous people that were dispossessed of land, and other kinds of reparative actions to make sure that there is equity and access to land. This can look like a lot of different things, we're talking right now at Grow Food Northampton, we're exploring possibilities for land rematriation as a possibility, an agrarian commons model, which means that the farmland, the land that Grow Food Northampton currently owns could be held by the farmers that are actually farming on the land. It could be a kind of community trust. Right now, Grow Food Northampton owns 121 acres that is our community farm, but we are looking into, we imagine this will be at least a decade worth of kind of research and looking at different options. We are looking at potential ways of doing some reparative action that would constitute land justice. So we have some core components to our work: land access and stewardship. I'll talk about each of these separately as we go on. Food access and community education. All of the work that we do is undergirded by some very core values to our organization. First and foremost, we talk about shifting power to people who have been marginalized and harmed by the industrial food system, both historically and currently. So people from communities such as members of our community who are Black, that their ancestors were brought over as enslaved peoples to essentially stand up the food and farming system of the United States. We also have as a core value environmental stewardship of our land. We're building climate resilience as we grow food, racial justice, environmental justice, economic justice, and dismantling all of the oppressive structures in our food system. One of the things that we feel like is a hallmark of Grow Food Northampton's work in the food system locally is that we do two things. We have a kind of holistic vision of what a just food system is. And one of those things is meeting immediate needs. So people who are food insecure right now, we are tending to that food insecurity and getting fresh local food to people who are hungry now in our community. But we are also thinking about the long term. What does it take to create a just, sustainable, long-term, foundational local food system that is also climate resilient and climate adaptive? And I'll talk about all of that soon. So before, right at the beginning, I talked a little bit about the purchase of the Bean and Allard farms. This is a map of the parcels. The Grow Food Northampton Community Farm is made up of 3 parcels, and they are not contiguous, interestingly. We have what we call our south parcel, which is only 19 acres, but it's kind of the heart of the community farm in that we have a community garden there. Excuse me, an organic community garden with 325 plots. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have on the other side of the playing fields that the city owns, we have another parcel. And then up Meadow Street a little bit, we have a third parcel. And I'll talk a little bit about what those look like. So I talked about our core components of programming. Land access is one of the most important pieces. We believe that everyone and anyone who wants to grow their own food or grow food for our community should have access to land. Another little known fact, in Massachusetts, since the 1940s, we've lost 75% of the farmland in Massachusetts. We are losing more every day. And so for people who want to grow food for our community, it's really hard for them to find land. It's almost impossible to find land to own. And renting land is quite expensive for many people. It's so expensive that many people are unable to afford to rent land. So we prioritize farmers from communities that have been harmed and marginalized by the food system. We prioritize farmers of color, refugee farmers, immigrant farmers, women farmers, queer farmers, people who are less likely to be able to have access to land. We lease land to 9 small farms, and I'll show you pictures of those farms in a minute. We have a 325 plot organic community garden. That's what this aerial image is that you're looking at. We have something we call our equitable access policy. We have a sliding scale fee for our farmland parcels for farmers, but also for our community gardeners. They can pay anywhere between $1 and market rates to lease farmland and to lease a community garden plot at the community garden. We also operate a giving garden where we grow about 9,000 pounds of food for donation to Manna Community Kitchen, the Northampton Survival Center, the Starlight Center, and a couple of other places each year. We grow a couple acres of edible fruit and nut trees and brambles for community foraging. So anyone in the community is welcome to come and forage fruits and nuts on the community farm. We have a native pollinator habitat, beehives, a medicine garden. And we also, 2 years ago, started an experimental farm parcel that is adjacent to the Mill River, where we have invited researchers, local researchers and academics who are researching agricultural methods that are climate adaptive or building climate resilience for our region, to come and farm for free at Grow Food Northampton to carry out this research. We have let's see. We also do our education programming on the community farm, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I mentioned we actually have 9 farms now on the community farm, and these are some images. The farms range from 1/4 of an acre to 60 acres, the farms that lease from us. One of the farms that I like to really kind of spotlight a little bit is the New Family Community Farming Cooperative Farm, which is a collective of 24 Somali Bantu refugee families. They actually live in West Springfield, but have really faced challenges closer to home to find land. They actually just purchased a small farm, a 6-acre farm in Agawam, but there are 24 families that have become so attached to farming in Florence at the Grow Food Northampton Community Farm that they are continuing to come to Florence to do their farming. These are some images from our community garden. I mentioned we have 325 plots. Again, an aerial image of those community garden plots. I don't know if any of you have walked through the community garden at kind of the height of the growing season. If you come in July or August, September, it is extraordinarily beautiful. It's hard to tell from this aerial image, but each of those 325 gardeners has their own style, grows different things, creates their own incredible beauty. You know, we have gardeners who have woven out of vines or out of plants that they grow small fences around their plots. And you can even see a little bit, there's one gardener who grows everything in a spiral shape. Everybody has flowers in their plots. So it's just at the height of the season, it's the most beautiful place to come for a walk. You know, it's filled with birds and hawks and butterflies and moths. It's a magical place. So I would really encourage any of you, all of you, to come and walk around the community garden. You're welcome to come. It's open all the time. And it's a place to kind of center yourself, to feel like you're in nature, to see people's dedication to growing food. It's just remarkable. I mentioned the Giving Garden. Uh, this is an interesting project that we created. We ourselves, as an organization, um, have not necessarily been farmers. We're more people that facilitate others' ability to grow food, to access land and grow food. But about 7 years ago, the organization received a grant to begin the Giving Garden. And so we have this 1.5 acres where we grow vegetables, beautiful organic vegetables. We use it as a place to do a lot of our education about gardening and farming techniques. Everything is organic, regenerative, agroecological growing methods. And we produce between 8,000 and 9,000 pounds of vegetables, all of which is donated in our immediate community in Northampton. So these are some of the images from the Giving Garden. What you see on the right-hand side, I think it's probably your right-hand side as well, is meals that have been prepared at Manna Community Kitchen, all from things that were grown at the Giving Garden. So that's kind of our land access / food access component. I'm going to move on to our food access work. So the first thing that we do that everybody knows about in Northampton at this point is our farmers markets. We now do year-round farmers markets. 9 months out of the year, we do Tuesday market in the plaza behind Thorne's Marketplace every Tuesday afternoon, weekly. The winter market is every other week, and it's at the senior center, and that runs for 4 months out of the year. One of the things that we do at the markets to make them affordable for people who are on SNAP, so those are people who are necessarily low income and food insecure, is we do a SNAP match program. So people can double only up to $20 their SNAP, their ability to spend their SNAP so that they can get more local produce. That's accompanied by HIP, another program, the Healthy Incentives Program, that allows them to buy fruits and vegetables so that it extends the SNAP spending even more. So we're really pleased that 27% of everything that is sold at our farmers markets is going to people who are food insecure. They're making their own decisions about what they want to purchase at the farmers market, and they're able to double their spending with the SNAP Match program. These statistics I have here are a little bit old. We now have close to 1,200 SNAP users, SNAP Match users at our markets every year. And these are just some really beautiful images of what is being sold at the markets. Our food access programming also includes what we're now calling our free mobile farmers market. You may have heard of the community food distribution project that was launched during the pandemic. It's morphed into the free mobile farmers market. We really wanted to focus on the farmers market aspect of it. This is food that Grow Food Northampton purchases from over 65 local farms. And that we distribute and deliver for free to 16 low-income housing communities around Northampton. To date, in the last 4 years, we've purchased over 1 million pounds of fresh local produce from 65 local farms. So we're really kind of floating all boats higher in our local food economy. And we have touched now over 3,200 unique households in Northampton with this fresh local produce that is distributed for free. We've worked with over 300 volunteers at this point, and if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity and would like to do food distribution, we welcome you to join our work on the free mobile farmers markets. We deliver all year, every week. And people receive enough fresh and canned, processed, local farm food to really supplement what they can purchase with SNAP for the entire week. And these are some images of the distribution that happens. One of the things we do is every week we offer recipes with whatever we're distributing so that people know how to use them. We have the recipes in English and Spanish always. Again, just some images so you can get a feel for the program. We set things up market style so that people can come and choose what they know they would like to use. This is at Meadowbrook as one of the places where we do distribution. This is at Hampshire Heights. I also want to talk about, I mentioned that one of our kind of undergirding values at Grow Food Northampton is that we are shifting power and leadership to the people who have been most affected, or people from communities most affected by food insecurity, that have been harmed and marginalized by the industrialized food system. That's the language that we tend to use. So one of the things that we have done is we have, for all of our programming, but particularly for our food access programming, we have a food access advisory committee and food ambassadors, excuse me, all people who are currently grappling with food insecurity, who essentially design and lead all of our food access programming. So we are, as an organization, taking direction from the people who are most affected by food insecurity. These are a few of the members of our Food Access Advisory Committee who allowed us to take their picture, just to give you a feel. They meet weekly. They are responsible for creating all kinds of ideas about events, putting the events together, talking to their neighbors where they live about what they want to see, what they need in terms of food and food knowledge, how to prepare food, nutrition around food. We recently just launched a series that goes into the different housing communities to talk about diabetes management, because we were hearing more and more, excuse me, that people were diagnosed with diabetes, and we're trying to figure out how to use the foods that we were distributing in ways that would help them manage their diabetes. So we have someone who comes in and delivers classes in Spanish, and we translate to English for the English speakers. This is Kia, who some of you may know because she's kind of known about town. She's a resident of Hampshire Heights. She's also a board member at Grow Food Northampton. She's on our Food Access Advisory Committee and is also a board member. One of the things that we are trying to do more and more is to include on our board and our staff people who they themselves have been affected by food insecurity and understand what it means to be food insecure. These are images from the events that we do. So we don't just, come and bring food and leave it there. We really are creating community around local, fresh, healthy, nutrient-rich foods. And so together with the Food Access Advisory Committee, we put together regular events, at least monthly, during the kind of growing season when there's more food. We usually do about 2 events a week at different housing communities. So these are images I'll show you from some of these events: cooking classes, nutrition classes, diabetes management classes, celebrations, potlucks, community meals together. wreath making in the winter. One of the places where it's Appleton Properties. I think it's called O'Connell Housing. There are 5 different organizations in the community that manage and operate low-income housing. Northampton Housing Authority is the one that most people know. They operate 7 different locations, but then there are 4 other organizations that operate low-income housing communities. One of them has a majority population of Latinos, mostly Puerto Ricans, and they themselves wanted to do a sofrito event. So they actually taught the Grow Food Northampton staff how to make sofrito and invited people from other housing communities to come. And we had this, not just a celebration, but we learned how to make sofrito and then prepared it and ate it. And that's a family housing community. Applepalooza included cider pressing, a harvest festival with recipes. I want to move on to the community gardens that we've launched at public housing, at low-income housing. We distribute and deliver food to up to 16 different locations. At 9 of those locations, in the last few years, we've established community gardens so that people who live at the housing communities can grow their own food. This season, we're breaking ground on 2 more, so we'll have a total of 11 different community gardens at public housing. And what that entails is not just kind of breaking ground and leaving the garden there. We provide mentorship, regular classes about how to grow food, all the tools, all the resources that people need, from soil to soil amendments to spades and hoes and all the different things you use to keep up a community garden. All of that is supplied by Grow Food Northampton. And we currently we're at about 160 community gardeners from low-income housing who are working these gardens. And we're hoping this season that we can bring that number up to 250 people. So not only are we distributing food, but we are helping people to grow their own food and have a sense of that food sovereignty, that they're choosing what they want to grow. We supply the seedlings and they are growing their own food. So these are just some images. That's Salvo House, I believe. You can see the top one. Oh, and the bottom one as well. This is an Appleton property on Stoddard Avenue, where we broke ground on a new community garden. This is Hampshire Heights, I believe, the community garden. Hampshire Heights. It's really amazing in the family housing communities because you really do see the entire family coming out and learning how to garden together. So there are kids and their parents and their grandparents, sometimes 3 generations, working a plot together and growing the food that they want to eat. This is a seedling distribution day last year for the community gardens at housing. You can see an invitation here to an event to talk about the community gardens. And the last thing, and then I'll stop talking because I've been talking for so long, is our community education work. We provide community education on all kinds of food system topics to learners of all ages. The images you see here are mostly children. And that's because we do have a relationship with the Northampton Public Schools. We partner with them to provide at least 3 farm-based, hands-on education opportunities on the Grow Food Northampton Community Farm every school year for kids between kindergarten and 5th grade. We also do a program at the JFK Middle School with the middle schoolers, which is badly named Club Food Fight, where kids are coming together to learn how to use fresh local produce to prepare meals for themselves and their families. And we provide internships and all kinds of mentorships for kids at the high school level and internships on the community farm for kids at the high school level. So we're really touching kids of all ages in our public schools. And we also provide, oh, I don't have an image. We provide workshops all year long for adults as well on regenerative and organic gardening, the history of the land that Grow Food Northampton now stewards, indigenous and other cultural foodways, just a variety of topics all related to the local food system. We're trying to bring everyone into participation in creating a local food system. And I think that's it. This is my favorite image from the community garden. This is just after sunrise in the middle of the summer. You can see some of the beauty of the community garden. And I am open for questions and so glad that you listened to me speak for how long now? Over half an hour. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the share. Oops. So we can see each other. There we go.
Lisa, thank you so much. That was really, your pictures, you're right. Your pictures are totally beautiful. And we loved hearing about all the good work that you're doing. So we're going to move into our next section, which will be questions. So I'm going to give you a moment all to get onto your chat and write your questions, and then we'll take them up. In the meantime, I just want to let you know again about the Northampton Neighbors Speaker Series. We will be taking a little hiatus for the summertime, and I think everyone can appreciate how beautiful, and we're coming into the spring and summertime. So we will not be having speakers for the next few months. Our next speaker is scheduled for September, and it will be Kim Parks, the director for the Senior Center. We hope to be able to resume hybrid sessions at that time, but I don't know the time and the specifics, so we will get back to you with any information about that as we get closer to September. And then also in October, we've got a very exciting guest coming. We have the president of Smith College, Willie.
Sarah Willie LeBreton.
Thank you for
I
helping
say
me
that
there.
as a proud alum of Smith College.
There we go. But that should be very exciting to hear what her life has been like, what with all what is going on. So, okay, so let's move into questions and let's see what we might have in chat for us. Let me get there. Yeah, I think we do have a question in chat. Okay, and the first one is, thank you, Alisa. Could you talk about how Grow Food and the city are responding to the Mill River flooding?
It's a great question. I didn't talk about the flooding from last year. So some of you might know that we had pretty catastrophic flooding of the Grow Food Northampton Community Farm this past July and again in December. So essentially, we ended up having in our 100-year floodplain 2 major floods in a period of 6 months. So the climate crisis has very much touched Northampton and the Mill River and Grow Food Northampton and the Connecticut River and farms all throughout Massachusetts, as you probably know. I just want to note that the person who's asked this question, Kim, is the mother of the president of the board of Grow Food Northampton, Diego, who we love dearly. So Kim, you know a lot about this. I appreciate that you asked the question. A good portion of our community farm, our south parcel of our community farm was under 5 feet of water in July. We lost about close to 60 acres of near to harvest vegetable. Um, that flood was particularly catastrophic because it happened at the height of the growing season in the summer. We've had floods all along of the Mill River for years, but they're usually in the winter or maybe in the fall. But the height of the growing season is when it's a catastrophe because it means that the food that is ready to be picked is not edible. You can't eat it. It becomes contaminated with floodwater, with the heavy metals and the just the sewerage and other things that come up into the fields from the river. So we lost 60 acres. 3 of our farms lost 100% of their crops. 2 of the farms lost about 50% of their crops. 2 of the farms escaped really massive damage. Our community garden was flooded, and we lost about 80% of the community garden plots. So it was catastrophic. What are we doing about it, though? We have had to create a new land use policy. We are moving some of the farms out of the particularly flood-prone area that's closer to the Mill River. We are converting more of the riparian buffer zone, that area right next to the river, into more experimental farmland. We currently have one farm situated there that is an experimental farm looking at flood mitigation ways of growing crops, but also how to essentially grow crops that send down deeper roots, that really hold the soil, that can withstand flooding. It's a 2-year-old plot. And sure enough, even though it's immediately adjacent to the Mill River and was completely flooded with 5 feet of water, all of the plants there stood their ground and remained in the soil and kept the soil in place. We didn't lose almost any topsoil there. So we are going to convert probably about 5 or 6 acres that are immediately adjacent to the Mill River to experimental plots that will do the same thing, that will work on figuring out different methods of climate resilience and climate resilient agricultural practices. So that's one thing that we're doing. We are in conversation with the municipality, with the city of Northampton, to apply for grant funding. There are a couple of different sources we know of at the federal level and the state level to start examining how we can create the Mill River in a new way so that it doesn't flood as catastrophically. The town of Williamsburg has one of these grants. It's called a Municipal Vulnerability Project grant, MVP grant. And I am, as we speak, in conversation with the Planning and Sustainability Department in the city to see if we can bring MVP monies to the Mill River in Northampton so we can continue that work from upstream in Williamsburg. So those are some of the examples. I'm getting a little bit technical here in responding to this, but this level of catastrophe demands that kind of technical approach.
Well, it's very reassuring to hear that, there's a lot of good thinking going into this, so I enjoyed that part. Another question is, to what extent do the local organizations, we know there's, the food bank, pantries, all these sort of thing, many organizations trying to deal with food insecurity. To what extent are you coordinating with these other orgs?
That's a great question. Thank you. We are in constant conversation with all of the organizations. COVID really, the pandemic really kind of lit a new fire under all of us. We started to understand how incredibly important it is for there to be a sense of network amongst all of us. And for us to be able to kind of conceptualize the work that we do as a kind of patchwork quilt, where each organization has a similar yet different role in making sure that our community is fed, even in emergency, even in something like a pandemic or in flooding, as another example. We, during the pandemic, created something called the Emergency Food Systems Network. I can't remember the exact name. Some of you, I know that Marty Wall is here, was part of that, where we started meeting on a monthly basis to talk about what each organization is doing, knowing what each other is doing, talking about the ways we can support each other, how we can partner with each other to make sure that our community is fed. One of the things that makes Grow Food Northampton unique is that, again, we're not just getting food to people in the immediate, but we are thinking about kind of a more foundational, systemic, systems change approach to the food system. And at the same time, we have partnered very closely with the Northampton Survival Center that is more about kind of shelf-stable food, some local food, but more kind of food that comes from the food bank that is not necessarily local. And we were working with them to supplement the food that they were distributing with fresh local farm food. So there are all these different ways at different points that we have coordinated to work together. I think there's a lot more work that can be done for us to really create that patchwork quilt that we're imagining, and but we're working towards that for sure.
Wonderful. And Sherry Cross contributed that an event is coming up, which is the Post Office Food Drive, which is Saturday, May 11th at 10 a.m. at the Northampton Survival Center. Postal carriers will leave collection bags at many homes, otherwise donations on that day to the Survival Center. I thought that was ingenious, getting local carriers to take our food and have it be of use somewhere. That's wonderful. So I'm looking forward to that. And you did get a good wishes from Marty Wall that you mentioned, who said thank you for your presentation and for all that Grow Food Northampton does for our community. The Northampton Education Foundation is very happy to be a major financial partner to make your education programs possible. So
Yes,
lovely.
we are very grateful to NEF. They do a large proportion of the funding for our education program that makes us able to work as closely as we do with the Northampton Public Schools.
Excellent. Well, another question that I had for you is, since, Northampton Neighbors is an organization for seniors, what do you worry about in terms of food insecurity for our senior community members?
That's a great question, Anne. We know that throughout the Commonwealth, seniors have a disproportionate rate of food insecurity. We historically did what we called the Red Bag Project, where we brought prepared bags of local farm food to the senior center for distribution. That ended during the pandemic. We haven't renewed it, but we are, how many is it? I think 7 out of the 16 low-income housing communities where we do food distribution and delivery are senior and disabled housing. So we are definitely getting food to folks who are food insecure in those low-income housing communities. We would love to be able to work outside of those, but we have a capacity challenge. We just have not been able to, staffing wise, in terms of the purchase of the food from the local farms, we haven't been able to expand our food distribution to seniors beyond those housing communities. But it's definitely on our list that we would like to be able to do more with seniors, because we know that those rates of food insecurity are high.
And I also wonder about seniors' ability to prepare the food. You talked a lot about, thinking about that. Any more thoughts about any additional help that might be needed there?
That's a really good question. And no, I have to say we have not worked on that. One of the things we do with the low income housing communities where we work, I mentioned that we do all kinds of activities and events. We do think adaptively in terms of what different levels of capability are for things like food preparation. So in the senior and disabled housing, we have had workshops that are looking at kind of adaptive ways of cooking and using the things that we deliver. But more extensively than that, we have not created program to really think about that and offer more to the community. But that is, you're planting some ideas in my brain here. That's a really good
Right.
question. I
I-
appreciate it.
I'm not sure you need more things to do, but
One thing too that we're doing is I mentioned the community garden plots at low income housing. We actually have created in all the senior and disabled communities where we created community gardens, we have created them as adaptive gardens so that there are raised beds. There are also wheelchair height beds, things of that nature, so that people who are disabled in wheelchairs are able to garden as well. So we definitely are thinking about these things and working to make them as accessible as possible to the people that we're currently serving.
wonderful. Diane Purcell is asking if you could share a link for the volunteer for people to know how they could volunteer.
I'd have to pull it up, but if you go to our website, which is growfoodnorthampton.org, right on the home page, there's a button that says volunteer. So you can hit that. It's probably growfoodnorthampton.org/volunteer, I would bet. But I'd have to look it up while you're posing the next question, perhaps.
Okay, if you can do that both at the same time, that'd be grand. Thank you. Yes, I think you probably got stimulated some interest here. Um, Naomi Gristel has two questions for you. She said, "What about any work on college campuses about the where there may be some growing food insecurity?" A good point, Naomi. I mean, with the kind of loans and financial challenges of going to school, that I would think could be an area of need.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. That's a really, really important question. And you're absolutely right. We know that the numbers are soaring these days on college campuses. Food insecurity is high. We have not worked with that population at all. I know that the food bank of Western Mass has been focusing on UMass quite a bit to address that. Um, we haven't, we do work quite closely with Smith in other ways, Smith College in Northampton, but we haven't addressed that because I think all students at Smith have access to the food services, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't think that Smith College as a Northampton resident, as it were, has that experience. I think it's more public universities that are coping with that. And we don't generally we work mostly in Northampton. We do a little bit kind of more regionally, but Northampton has been our focus as an organization. So we have not addressed the question of food insecurity in college campuses and university campuses. But it is of great concern. So that's a really good question.
Thank you. And we have a last question here about why the language of food insecurity instead of hunger?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a very politicized in the community of people who work on food insecurity and hunger. There's an ongoing debate about why it makes more sense to use one versus the other. Um, I think, I mean, I can't actually tell you exactly what the debate is. I haven't let that kind of um, take a lot of my time and attention. But I do think that it's partly what happens in the nonprofit world that certain things gain popularity and lose popularity over time, so that hunger became more associated, I think, with the concept of global hunger, hunger in the global south. Whereas in the United States, food insecurity became more the way that we frame a lack of access to food. Um, I wish I knew more. I'm wondering actually, Sherry, if you know much about that. I don't know if we can unmute Sherry if you have an answer, but Sherry's a communications person who's been part of Grow Food Northampton for years, and I'm just wondering if you know more about the history of why one term is used rather than the other.
I unmuted you, Sherry.
Okay, thank you. Um, I don't know as much about it as I would like to, except that I do agree with you. I think that certain phrasing becomes current, and so it's easier for people to work with common language than if, because very quickly, you're right, it gets assigned certain categories, and then people don't hear it any longer. So I think with I agree with your comment about what's au courant. So
Yeah, sorry, we don't have a better, more incisive answer. That's from
Isn't
Naomi too, right? Yeah, sorry, Naomi.
Well, we are past the 4 o'clock hour. I guess I could, if anybody is interested in asking another question, you certainly could put up your hand, and we could give it a minute to see if anybody wants to ask any final last questions, or Elisa, if you want to make any final last comments before we wrap up.
Well, I will say I'm happy to stay on and talk if people want to have a more kind of organic conversation. But I just want to say thank you so much to Northampton Neighbors for doing this. Thank you for your interest in Grow Food Northampton. I myself am a member of Northampton Neighbors and approaching the official senior category any day now. And I also want to thank individually, I know a lot of you, Ellie Rothman is here, who was one of my mentors at Smith College when I was at Smith. It's very exciting. Sherry Cross was a member of the board of Grow Food Northampton for a long time. So it's just so exciting to see all these people that have played roles in my life personally. And I'm just so glad to be able to share information about this organization that I love. And I do want to say I have had a very long career at this point in my life, and this is my absolute favorite work that I've ever done. I love Grow Food Northampton. I'm not saying that like a sales pitch. I'm saying it because I really feel it and mean it. It's a remarkable organization with great people involved, doing work with so much integrity and thoughtfulness. And so it's just great to be able to share it with you. And I really didn't mean that to be a sales pitch. I hope it didn't sound like that.
No, your enthusiasm is infectious, I must say. I appreciate that very much. And I'm not seeing any other final questions, so I think we may call it a day. Okay, and we can all get out into that beautiful afternoon. Thank you so much for all of you attending. And remember, we are taking a hiatus, no speaker series until next September, and you'll see the advertisements come out. Thank you all. Thank you, Elisa.
Thank you.
Bye bye.